In this module, I discuss semi-annual bond valuation and show the calculations via the BA2 Plus finance calculator made by Texas Instruments. Other calculators can be used as long as they have basic finance functionalities, such as the time value of money register, which is N, IY, PV, PMT, FV, and maybe some specialized finance functions such as IRR, NPV, cash flow. So to give you a basic overview of semi-annual bond valuation, I will utilize the following 4 slides: 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I'm going to go from theory to practice. The core semi-annual bond valuation formula is here, and it is derived of the annual bond valuation formula, where the current price of a bond is the present value of the annual bond interest stream and the par value of the bond at maturity. So VB is the value of bond at time 0. INT is the annual bond interest in dollars. That's the interest payment, also called the coupon. M is the par value of a bond, typically $1,000. KD is the required rate of return. That's called the discount factor, also the interest rate, which on the calculator is IY. And N is the number of years to maturity, which corresponds to N on this button. And VB corresponds to PV here, and INT corresponds to PMT, and M corresponds to FV on the calculator. Next slide. The formula has to be adjusted. Since bonds typically pay interest every 6 months, semi-annual bonds, they increase the present value of the cash flow and thus the value of a bond. So now instead of getting interest at the end of 12 months, you get it at the end of 6 months. And so the core concept there is, if you're getting interest at the end of 6 months, you get to reinvest it at the prevailing market rate, and thus you are earning interest on interest. And that's called compounding. Einstein once famously is supposed to have said that the most powerful force on earth is the power of compounding. So when you get your interest deposited in your account at the end of 6 months, it earns an interest for extra 6 months. And so that adjustment is reflected in this bond valuation formulation. You take your interest payment, you divide it by 2. The market discount rate is divided by 2. The number of total time periods goes up by a factor of 2. See, it's not that a 10-year bond becomes a 20-year bond. It's that a 10-year bond which had 10 annual interest deposits will now have 10 times 2. That's 20 annual interest deposits. And so after making those adjustments, you leave the terminal value of the bond as the same. You do not make an adjustment here because whether semi-annual or annual, the maturity value will be unchanged. So now let's go on to the practical side here. So translation of that formula is multiply years by 2 to get periods equals 2n. Divide the nominal rate by 2 to get the periodic rate RD by 2. Divide the annual interest amount, notice this is a dollar amount, by 2 to get payment. That's interest by 2. So n is actually 2n, IY is RD by 2, PV that remains the same, original, FV remains the original, and PMT is whatever interest dollar amount you have divided by 2. Let's do an example. Find the value of a 10-year, 10% coupon semi-annual bond if the market discount rate is 13%. So what will your inputs be? It's 10 years. So 10 years, typically we would do n equals 10. But now we have to do 2 times 10, that's 20. So let's enter 20, and that's n. So it's not that your bond is 20 years, but there are 20 time periods over which the interest will be compounded. The discount rate, the annual discount rate is given as 13. That has to be adjusted to 13 divided by 2, that's 6.5 IY. So then you do 6.5. See, I made a mistake, it's 6.2. You don't have to erase everything, just use the back arrow button here, sort of like backspace. 6.5 and that's your IY. PV, we are shooting for PV. We don't know what PV is, so we skip that. PMT is 50. How do you get 50? Well, there are actually 3 steps to it. First is this 10% coupon needs to be converted to a dollar amount. Sometimes students make a mistake and they'll just do 10 here, or 10 divided by 2, 5 here. No, PMT is a dollar amount. Please keep that in mind. So 10% of 1,000. You don't see 1,000 here. 1,000 is the par value of the bond. So 10% of the 1,000 is 100. 100 divided by 2 is 50. So 50, that's your payment. And the par value of the bond is 1,000. That's simple. Do that. And compute PV will give you the current price of the bond. Compute PV, that's $834.72 is the current price of the semi-annual bond. This is Pank Agrawal, PhD Finance, giving you a tutorial on the topic of semi-annual bond pricing.